Yeah, which is kind of weird, right? Because you got like such a big group. It's like, how did it all turn out to be Group B today? But turns out Group A people just don't like playing on Tuesdays. They're like, Wednesday or later. They're fussy. They're always picking their things. They got stuff to do, places to be, apparently. But yeah, this is our lone match in Group A, and yeah, a sign as to who's going to get 2-1, who's going to start being in some trouble as well, and start setting up that round 4 in a few days' time. Top right is PtitDrogo, our Red Protoss player, who has played a couple of PvPs so far. Looked pretty good against Christiana, just lost out there, and honestly kind of stomped for Jumi, so excited to see if he can keep up that form into this one.
Yeah, and down over here in the bottom left-hand side of the map, we have the blue Protoss player. He is ShaDoWn, who's going to be playing for Platinum Heroes. And he himself also had a good series versus Acheron, took a series there. Ended up losing to Hearthstone in the last round, but that was actually a really close PvP that ended up going 1 and 2.
Yeah, Nelly edge tossed him out, and obviously that would have been a chance to go 2 and 0, which would have been sick for ShaDoWn. ShaDoWn's a player who has been consistently kind of making the bid for playoffs. Don't forget that one season he beat Clem in the really solid PvT series as well. So he's absolutely been a player that's been challenging for a long time at this stage. And, honestly, would not be surprised if he made playoffs at this point, be like, oh, good for ShaDoWn. Not super surprised. No, he can do it. We know we've seen his potential before. Yeah, he's maybe not always going to make playoffs, but in a group like this, I think it's very plausible for him.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good way of putting it. It's kind of one of the players that you look at their trajectory. It's not necessarily that it's not maybe new ground that he would break by something by making playoffs or even making like a round or something into the playoffs, but it is something that just his trajectory kind of makes it seem like, yeah, that seems totally plausible and reasonable if he's able to make that. But I do think he is still very much so one of those players that is on the cusp of it and on the cusp of where we have those kind of expectations and stuff. So can he live up to those expectations? Will he end up faltering over here? This is going to be an extremely important match for exactly that. And as we head into an extremely important match, one of the most frustrating ways things can open up potentially one of these extremely important matches is with a Stargate versus Stargate, and your opponent scouts out your Stargate. And I don't even think the probe reveals itself. Okay, well, he's gonna just dive back in over there. Okay, I was like, oh, this could have gone like an unrevealed Stargate. But I don't know, doesn't matter.
I guess he just did he just not click on it straight away? He wants to double confirm what it is, maybe. I would guess. I didn't actually see exactly, but yeah, I mean, otherwise it would have been nice to not reveal the probe, because then you can just, like you say, have your own Stargate, build a Phoenix, you know what's coming. The Adepts get in. I think Drogo, obviously, he didn't set out to deal with this because he was on the Adepts quickly. He is going to lose a few workers still, so it's going to be costly. In a way, I was like, I don't mind it because the Adepts are so far from the mineral line. When he gets to a bit of a probe pull, it's obviously not bad for the Adepts, but it's not terrible. Now you've got rid of them, you don't have to worry about them. And the Oracles. The Oracle's going to show up. The Stalkers a step away from where they maybe should have been. And actually, Drogo going to his own Oracle, and that's important. ShaDoWn just noticed that as well, so he knows it's an Oracle from Drogo and not a Phoenix. He can prep his own defenses.
Yeah, really fascinating there. The Drogo, he scouts out the Stargate, but still just says, yeah, I'm going to go for my own Oracle. And I mean, he should have seen basically the timing of it, that the Stargate was just so much faster and stuff, that there would be the faster Oracle for ShaDoWn. So he would have also just noticed what was going on over there. But yeah, I guess either way, he doesn't feel like it's worth just getting the Phoenix to try and chase down the Oracle. Maybe he feels like it's the curse of PvP, where if you get a Phoenix and your opponent goes Oracle, somehow, some way, that Oracle never really seems to encounter the Phoenix. But regardless of the reasoning, it does seem like Oracle for Drogo is going to get scattered as well, and may have a harder time getting some damage done.
Yeah, Oracle back over on the left side. There's an Oracle coming down the bottom as well. We just have ourselves the Adept just pinging away. A little revelation into the main base. Have fun couple moments. Nothing too serious, though.
Yeah. A little funny to see an Adept nearly kill all of the shields on the pylon, and then the Oracle taking care of the Adept like that. But like you said, nothing too wild or crazy happening over here. There's 2 probes is like a moderate amount of damage over here, but you're really not expected to get a lot more damage on it, especially with Blink about halfway finished for both of these players, and even a Phoenix out over here for PtitDrogo. Those Oracles, they should be getting very minimal amounts of damage. At most, probably just some like scouting revelations and stasis traps.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, oracles really are just revelations at this point, right? Keep up information, keep up knowledge of where your opponent is moving to. If they want to try and take a third base that time, it is, of course, good to know. The Oracle of ShaDoWn is kind of quite passive as they trade revelations on each other. Apparently, that's, the excitement of this game right now. And yeah, ShaDoWn is going to move out and take the third base already. So locking that down onto place. We see a pylon coming down just next to it. And obviously, a Blink about to finish up from ShaDoWn, not far behind from Drogo. Pretty even scenario, really. Not much between the two of them. I'm trying to pick apart differences, and it's really just the third base timing is that much faster for ShaDoWn because he just went out and built it sooner. Like, there's really not a lot of rocket science to it, right?
Yeah, I really do think like the numbers in the production tab kind of tell the tale here. The biggest difference now, I guess, just being like the third base, like you were saying, and the slightly faster robo there in exchange there for Drogo. So we'll see. Drogo did set up this proxy pylon, and he's even setting up some stasis traps and stuff he can fall back to and kind of get aggressive with. Blink being finished up for both these players means this really is going to come a lot down to the micro and how the skirmishes and the actual trades go here. That force field.
Yeah, that one was interesting, right? So, cool.
That has to have been a misclick. Like, I can't imagine that being something besides a misclick. I feel like maybe that's like, I'm trying to think of if maybe Drogo has like a grid hotkey setup or something, and he like tried to click a stalker and blink it back, but instead he ended up force fielding there instead.
It was definitely something. I whatever the explanation may be.
It was something.
Yeah. Oracle gets shoved out through the top side, by the way, so that's going to get pushed all the way away over here. That's that robo facility about halfway done from ShaDoWn. Forge also coming up right now from ShaDoWn as well. So just continue to set this up. We see this Oracle. It's going to drop a revelation again. Information is key at this point still. And yeah, Drogo really set up as though he wanted to be like very aggressive, but he had no advantage to be aggressive with, right? So yeah, just not exactly like that exciting. Just sort of chilling, and now he is going to be on +1. His opponent goes double Forge, and we'll see if that can play into something exciting, as ShaDoWn's going to get rid of this forward pylon as well. And ShaDoWn in a bit of a supply block, and still will be when this pylon finishes up, so that's kind of serious, and it's little macro errors like that will start to give edges to players, because it's that close of a game otherwise.
Yeah, I'm super interested to see how the double Forge actually is going to end up playing out. Hearthstone was doing this interesting strategy where he was playing his series, I think, actually against ShaDoWn himself. I think it was in that series that we ended up seeing the double Forge. I may be misremembering which series because, as I said before, my memory is the opposite of Rotterdam's. But I know I saw a PvP on Sunday where we saw the Protoss player, who I thought was Hearthstone, just going for like lots of fast armor upgrades, eventually getting on shields and stuff. And how do you feel like those impact in PvP? Because I think it really wasn't the thing that most people would go for in PvP until more recently.
It's still not something I would say you do in PvP because,
yeah,
my knowledge is from experience, and my experience is that people don't build armor because it sucks, right? like attack upgrades are king, especially when you got Stalkers, right? And, Stalkers really do deal a lot of shots compared to what they take a lot of the time, and then armor doesn't kick in until the shields are gone, so if you're blinking properly, armor doesn't matter a lot either. So it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure what the breakpoints are or what changes necessarily when armor comes into play. Something for me to learn, I guess, is, it just isn't something you see a lot. And if you go into Disruptors too, then it really isn't popular to have armor because it just also doesn't make a difference, right? So,
you get one shot either way.
It's funky, for sure.
Yeah, well, ShaDoWn's still going to decide to invest into it, and he's going to have that armor upgrade finishing on up. So we'll see if that makes any kind of real difference here in those Stalker versus Stalker trades. Because like you were saying, really doesn't impact when the shields are there, but whoa, that's a very, very nice catch over there for ShaDoWn. Finds a couple of Stalkers or softens a few up, even though he gets caught by the stasis trap. Forces Drogo back a bit, and he is leading a little bit in supply, but most of that is worker supply right now for ShaDoWn. Drogo, maybe gonna try and even that up with the Dark Shrine, but I guess both of these players are actually going for their own Dark Shrine.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that phase of the game, right, where DTs are going to start becoming the main harassment unit. If you're not playing DTs, you're pretty much just putting yourself at a disadvantage for no reason at all. So, yeah, get yourself that Dark Shrine down, get the DTs going, get Shadow Stride started, because Blink is typically something you go for at this stage. We do catch on. So it was actually Drogo that revelated the Observer of ShaDoWn, but then the detection was still there to get rid of the Observer of Drogo. So fun little back and forth on that one. There's a couple more DTs coming up. +2 attack upgrade as well, about to finish. And the next on the left side from ShaDoWn, trying to get to 5th base, so is Drogo. still matching each other in a lot of ways, apart from obviously the armor upgrades a little bit different. Drogo had a faster charge, but isn't really looking to use it yet. We don't have too many zealots on the map. ShaDoWn also has that one immortal. Yeah, I mean, you know, those are the only differences I can pick out. It's a very, very standard game otherwise between the two of them.
Yeah, I feel like units lost actually tells the tale a lot more clearly of like what has actually happened in this game. Because even though there's been so much of this like poking and prodding, especially from Drogo, we haven't actually had any real trades. Neither one of these players until just now with that Nexus kill have actually lost 1,000 resources. But here we go. We're seeing a massive stasis trap on the north side. ShaDoWn losing out on so many of his units, and Drogo already had a handful more stalkers. That is going to dramatically change the way that this fight goes. Oh, but now the DTs come on in because there's no detection for Drogo.
Yeah, this was a real journey as 25 probes do go down. It was a really awesome fight because obviously you got the stasis as Drogo. You also dragged units to the left side because of the DTs that killed off that left side base. So it was just a very small portion of ShaDoWn's army, and yet ShaDoWn comes out in a pretty okay position. It really goes to show that Drogo was in need of killing workers. Army supplies are even after this as well. We do come back in with DTs on the left side. That's the one thing Drogo has, a bit of momentum on the map. And so going back in on the left side, for example, then pushing back down here, that still benefits him. I'm not sure how much more you can do, though. I mean, we come in, there's a couple of zealots he can bait forward initially. He's got the Oracle. He needs a Revelation on the DTs, of course, because he does not want to have those swiping away. They made a big difference during the tail end of that fight.
Oh, absolutely. They do so much damage against the Stalkers. And, well, there's the Revelation, but he's not actually able to continue engaging. He even got the Revelation actually off on the Observer, so being able to pick that off would keep his own Observers alive a little bit longer and keep them safe so he can continue to detect things. But really, really weird set of trades here. I feel like killing off that extra base for ShaDoWn should have been able to put him to a better position alongside obviously the 25 workers that he killed that kind of even things up. But it does feel like it's a little bit more even than I would have expected. And even the little stalker pressure and stuff gets spotted by an observer, so not a whole lot of damage actually happening over here. Really does feel like in a lot of ways this game is kind of evened up, and it still just feels like it's now starting to get to the point where the armor upgrades, I have to imagine, are starting to play a bit of a difference, right? +2 armor. If you're literally just talking about even armies, the armor upgrades have to be making a difference, surely.
You would expect so. I mean, even if you have to go through shields first, you got to hit those armor upgrades at some point. Drogo now starts his own armor upgrades. He starts his own Shadow Strike much later than ShaDoWn, so ShaDoWn will have better harassment coming up here. His ability to blink DTs around so much sooner, to me, feels like it's going to be a pretty major advantage, as Drogo feels confident enough to take the gold base towards his opponent, splitting the map with, or splitting the army across two sides of the map as well, sending Zealot Stalker down the left-hand side. And yeah, just trying to keep this active all over the place. Does he have enough over here? He does not get the Observer Snipe, which is a shame because he was about to bring his DTs in the fight on the left. Meanwhile, on the right side, we do break out into a Stalker War as well, but ShaDoWn seems to be getting the better of each of these trades. Even though +3 attacks in play for Drogo, 2-2 does seem to be good from ShaDoWn. Drogo gets a bit of a pushback, but not that major one compared to everything else going on.
Yeah, it's seemingly close fights on both sides, but it does seem like ShaDoWn is just getting ever so slightly better advantages in these kind of fights, whether it be slight concave advantages, whether it be just the difference of that +2 armor or something. And even now with both players getting +3 weapons at around the same time, it feels like ShaDoWn is finding little advantages, and that's kind of getting reflected a bit in some of that army supply. ShaDoWn is up almost about like 15-20 supply, and he's going to actually go for the big blink forward because he brought a lot of his other stalkers and zealots from the left-hand side over to the right. So it's going to be a base for a base trade. But one of these players has a massive army advantage now. The other one is just on a harassment force.
Yeah, I mean, Drogo's DTs, you do not really want to be there. There is an Observer, so with detection, the DTs die quickly, and they're expensive units to be losing. And ShaDoWn is able to continue the march up this right side. The numbers look amazing for him as well. And yeah, what Drogo has back on this side just isn't really that much. The recall is actually going to be about perfect. It's enough to add on to the reinforcements there and turn Drogo around. And ShaDoWn, at this point, just 50 army supply lead means he still has quite an overwhelming army here. Drogo is backing off and is regrouping, as this is obviously the 4-base setup now from both players, but ShaDoWn, like we've said, has the larger standing army and should continue to do well with that.
Yeah, does have to just reinforce some of those pylons on supply block himself from some of the losses on the left-hand side. But after that gets done, I mean, he's actually got even a little bit of a bank. He doesn't really have the close reinforcing pylons or like a prism or anything, but at this point, it feels like he has a large enough army that he's able to hit on the left and also take the main army fight right now. And that is going to go heavily, I feel like, I wanted to say in his favor. He is going to be retreating against the Zealots and stuff. I guess the Stalkers are sitting a bit lower on hit points. I'm actually surprised things didn't go even better over there, but I still feel like he should have, with the reinforcements, way more than he needs to take on Drogo's army.
He did just lose his observer. Maybe that becomes an issue. He continues up the left-hand side. He's also winning out over here, and he has the detection against DTs if they get warped in as well. So, yeah, ShaDoWn just getting too much done across the board. Drogo continues to fall behind. I'm just going to be seeing a couple more Zealots warped in, but ShaDoWn is just going to back it up for a second, and now he's going to go active on the right side, and again, just this movement from ShaDoWn has been really good. Just hitting the left, having a good idea of when his opponent's backed away, and making the move on the right that much better as well. There goes an Oracle, which has been useful for kind of grabbing some DTs at points, so nice to get rid of that. And this base is probably just going to die, but, you know, Drogo's across the map as well, so, yeah, maybe he can make something of this. But the problem is, base for a base just ain't that good when your opponent's so far ahead anyways. You need to be doing plays that, you know, put you further ahead, and this is just keeping it even, which, you know, obviously keeping it even isn't even when your opponent starts out in the lead.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't even mind this as much for Drogo if he just goes straight over to the main base and starts taking out production, and it looks like that's actually going to be the game plan. The kind of awkward part about this is now he is a little bit trapped. Now, taking out some of the pylons and stuff, even slowing down one of the shield upgrades is going to be kind of nice, but this is the problem, is that if you are outnumbered and your opponent is getting in over here, even if the DT is actually getting a lot of free damage done during all this, the Observer is eventually going to arrive. The Stalkers are all going to end up falling dramatically fast, and well, now it's 40 army supply versus 85. ShaDoWn maybe loses a little bit or a few bases here and there, but PtitDrogo just has next to no mining and also does not have any army supply, really.
Yeah, income lead massively in ShaDoWn's favor, and just looking solid in the longer game, right? I mean, 17 minutes here, it's been a lengthy one, and it has looked very, very good, I would say. Just ShaDoWn looking confident, looking good. Yeah, very cool to see as we have ourselves the little stasis water by Drogo. A little bit more time. How much time that really gives him, I'm not sure if it will ever be enough. Drogo knows this is over. GG's, and ShaDoWn takes game number 1.
Yeah, honestly, I have to say, obviously cool game from ShaDoWn to just take the little advantages there. We saw, like, as we were pointing out before, lots of little pokes and prods, very minor differences, but very mirrored builds and kind of styles and stuff coming out from both the players. But even though we ended up seeing ShaDoWn like gradually take little advantages here and there was a point where it just felt like Drogo was just a bit behind. And I have to say, I have to commend him on, I think, some of the decisions he was making to try and come back in the game, because it did feel like he was doing a lot of cool moves, making the kind of base for base trades, getting the DT warp-ins at like just the right time, making the strategic decisions during the micro of those battles to like snipe off the observers at the right time, or just to position his army in annoying places. And I felt like that a lot of those things kept him in that game from really falling too much further behind. Well, I mean, also ShaDoWn was able to still overcome all of that, so good on him.
Yeah, he was able to overcome all that, wasn't he? So I mean, ShaDoWn, you know, if I had to pick a favorite, I guess, going in, I would maybe say ShaDoWn has been more consistent, and that's a lot of just because I don't see Drogo a lot. We know Drogo took that big step back from playing competitively as well, right? So yeah, you know, I mean, I know ShaDoWn's not necessarily been full-time all the time, but I would say he's been more competitive lately. Cool to see Drogo putting up a fight, and absolutely the kind of game where I feel like you could see a game 2 go just so differently as well, because this one was very mirrored and just even at the start. And ShaDoWn kind of took some edges and took some good later game fights, but if Drogo gets aggressive, he showed us some really good aggression against some of the previous PvPs, so that could be something that he uses to get an edge, and yeah, maybe he can take some, you know, a couple things from that first game as well and just adjust slightly if it does end up being one of those longer ones, as Drogo joins our lobby and should be moments away from readying up into our game number 2, and yeah, I think he's commenting on the +2 armor of ShaDoWn, by the way.
I see mess units, and then I have no idea what some of these other words are. Unfortunately, speaking French.
I don't know if you want to translate that one.
Google Translate. I was thinking about just tapping over to Google Translate to see what they're talking about exactly, but yeah, the armor upgrades are just so fascinating to me, because I'm with you. Like I have been trained by, I feel like it wasn't years, it was like almost a decade of PvP where you just are basically like, it's drilled into you that armor upgrades are effectively just not worth going for in PvP. And then just, I feel like in the past 2 weeks, I've just been seeing a few Protoss players, not even a lot, just a few Protoss players start going for these armor upgrades, and I am fascinated by the decision.
That's just why StarCraft's so cool, though, right? Something that's been the norm for such a long time can still change, right? Because the meta shifts, and then people figure out something else, and they figure out a way to make armor good and to make it all different, and just very cool in general, man. Very cool in general. Top left, our red Protoss player, PtitDrogo, opening up this game 2 and looking to bounce back, tie us up in this series, hopefully give us another game 3, because after that earlier ZVZ, we have got time to spare before America's Fear Dragons, so we can go to all the game 3s we like.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the series after this is it involves Bly, so that may be a shorter one.
Either short or really long. Sometimes Bly's games can get lengthy, but that was also kind of past Bly. I don't know about current Bly.
Especially when Bly is losing. Sometimes he will stick in those games and really fight it out to the bitter end. But down over here in the bottom right-hand side, we do have our blue Protoss player. He is ShaDoWn, representing Platinum Heroes. Oh, but I think I fully agree with what you were saying before. I think that last game, PvP is just one of those matchups where sometimes you just get players who go for the exact same playstyle and everything. They go for the same kind of unit compositions, and it can be very, very close and very contentious, especially when the players are pretty similar skill levels and everything. And then the next game in the series, they go for totally different styles and things look dramatically different. And you have to even remember that last game began with the proxy Stargate and stuff that kind of got scouted, but also didn't get hard punched or anything. So there's a lot of weird potential here with 2 proxy pylons already getting set up.
One on the either side of the map, and that's more or less the same position, a little bit to the right from Drogo, a little bit closer to the base. Let's see what buildings they're going to be. It's close enough to be a Stargate, but it's also good enough to be a Robo, and it's a gate and a Robo. Ooh.
Yeah, the Robo is actually more of what I was expecting. ShaDoWn doing a bit more of what I thought would happen. The Gateway, I haven't seen, I see this sometimes in PvP, but it's a lot less common, I feel like.
Yeah, the proxy gate is, I mean, obviously 2 gates in PvP aren't exactly weird to begin with, right?
Yeah.
So that alone makes me think it's like, well, how much success can this really see? And then you go up against a proxy Robo. I feel like Drogo's going to be in the worst position here, especially if he ends up losing the power to that gate and you're 1 gate down in your defense. Because I feel like it's definitely ShaDoWn that's going to have more to work with on the other side. Drogo has a 3rd gate as well, so yeah, obviously 3 gates in total, just going to be that immediate power. I mean, maybe the immediate power 3 gate versus the setup time of the Immortal could give Drogo the edge. Yeah,
I think another important thing to remember is that as Drogo finds the Robo. Okay, so this is actually so important because now he knows what's happening. I was going to say, I think the unit positioning is going to matter a lot as well because these Immortals have to rally through the center of the map. If Drogo's going to be the one that gets aggressive first here, then those Immortals have to come in kind of from like an awkward angle behind. They don't have necessarily the safety of things. ShaDoWn is instead going to try and go for the Warp Prism, which I think will help keep the Immortals alive and rally a little bit more safely over.
He knows where this gateway is, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is really bad.
This gets tough.
Yeah, because
this gets really tough.
I don't even like the warp in because it's only 1 warp in, and the Immortal's so powerful at this point as well. I understand you want to protect this pylon in the gateway, but he didn't even have the barrier popped on the Immortal. The Zealot's a cool idea, but I actually feel like ShaDoWn could have probably just targeted down the pylon already. Either way, he's going to get it now, and this is where Drogo does not have tech. He builds a Stargate at home, but yeah, not thoroughly convinced just yet. The second Immortal coming up, and it's all going to be about ShaDoWn's pressure here, and that's going to be tough for Drogo to hold, I honestly believe.
Yeah, so Wardy, how do you feel about Milky Cow versus Black? Just kidding. This is extremely difficult to hold. Imagine that you basically are trying to go for this big all-in attack, and then your opponent actually just kills all of your units, barely losing anything. They lose a single Stalker in exchange for 4 of your Stalkers and a Zealot. And now they also have a stronger army composition with more power units like a Warp Prism and everything. The 4 Stalker counter hit squad is really, really cute. He's going to be able to do damage a little bit faster, but doesn't matter if you can't clean everything up. The Phoenix lift up on the Immortal is actually a really, really sick start, though. Yeah. Second Immortal, shut up, ShaDoWn. Please pay attention. I know you've got stuff going on the other side, but this Immortal was super important, and he kind of just let it go down. I kind of wish he just clicked the
he kind of just clicked on the other side of the map and just let his probes and stalkers fight those stalkers, and then really focus on this side because the fight was just messy in general. Like, there was nothing really good about this fight from ShaDoWn on the upper left. Like, he just kind of wandered up. He took a very long time to decide what to do. If he'd gone immediately as well, because he could have just lifted over the force field, and he took a long time to decide to do that, he could have been on top of the 2 units when it was only 2 units, and then everything warping in would have got shot down too. But because he hesitated, Drogo got the chance to warp in, and I appreciate that's the moment where he was deciding to warp in at home, pull probes. But you have to kind of, you know, prioritize, and I think this time he prioritized incorrectly, because you can deal with the units on the other side later, but you had to do damage right then and there yourself. And I think he made the wrong decision prioritizing, and that put him into a really bad spot.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement on that entire analysis over here, but it is, I mean, I'll take full blame on this for saying that I was calling this game a bit early, because Drogo's suddenly actually looking to be in a pretty decent spot. He's able to kill off his opponent's tech building for the robo, so there is nothing but 2 gateways on the map now for ShaDoWn. And he's also doesn't really have a shield battery to protect this natural expansion. He's only leading by 2 stalkers, which kind of gets compensated for the fact that there are adepts, also a sentry and an oracle and a phoenix out for Drogo. I don't really know what ShaDoWn actually has going for him, unless he can somehow mount a defense of that natural. If he can mount a defense of that natural without really losing a whole lot, then I think that there is a chance for him to kind of bounce back from those earlier losses.
Yep, absolutely. As Drogo is going to come forward right now. No battery on this natural. Obviously, couldn't overcharge just yet. Second oracle coming up, which I love, because it just means that battery coming down doesn't begin to protect this out of nowhere. You're still going to have to commit stalkers. And Drogo obviously does have the later expansion. The adepts come in. The oracle's going to combine, so you have to prioritize. You have to stop the units going down, or the probes going down one way or another. You're going to get 5 workers, and that just keeps Drogo ahead by, well, 6 workers. So all the damage he just did added him, or put him up into a lead. And still has potential to poke around at the front as well.
Yeah, and I mean, even just killing off that number of workers, ShaDoWn now, even with a later natural expansion, yeah, it's going to make up for the fact that he's not going to have double pro production for a little bit, because he just has a little bit more of a buffer to work with. Losing one of the oracles is a little bit unfortunate there for Drogo, but nice pick off there for ShaDoWn. I do feel like economically, I kind of look at this as them being in a pretty similar boat, but again, Drogo just has a little bit more tech to work with.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a step ahead in the Twilight and the Forge. Just because he's forced some probe pulls, ShaDoWn's not been mining properly the entire time, so his tech is just a little bit later to being afforded, even though he's kind of generally had decent work again. Obviously, just also probe pull and losing a few probes there. I think that's the only difference there really was. Otherwise, the game's pretty evenly set. Like, ShaDoWn had more stalkers, while Drogo had a couple more sentries. Drogo obviously had the set, you know, Oracle and the Phoenix, or had the important one. It's a nice catch.
Yeah.
So, you know, game kind of even. I don't think Drogo should necessarily try and fight here. The only thing that could go well is obviously force fielding the army in half when this stasis pops. And that maybe means that ShaDoWn should back away. He's got his own force fields available. And as we do see him just diving forward, going after some sentries initially, but half of his army just is not in this fight. He tries to force field so that it can get in the fight, and it is kind of working out. These force fields of Drogo will expire soon. And then ShaDoWn gets everything else up here, and he's going to get a few more kills before Drogo is back in battery range.
What a topsy-turvy game. I'm with you that felt like it was going to be a really, really scary way to try and engage. I actually, part of me wouldn't have even minded if you had thrown down the force fields before the stasis like properly expired, because I don't think the stasis like blocks force fields or anything. So you could just do that a little bit preemptively and cut up the units a bit. But oh man, now Drogo is going to be down a bit of that army supply and loses a lot of those little advantages. Also having lost the oracles and stuff from earlier on. Yes, he is going to be finishing up Blink a bit earlier on, so I think he can be a bit more aggressive out on the map. But ShaDoWn is already rightfully pulled back in time, has a pylon and a third base and stuff coming up over here, so he's going to have the fast reinforcements available to help defend against this little bit of aggression from Drogo. It's just going to be about Drogo making use of the Blink, and, well, he gets to do a very awkward position over here, as he can just blink into the main base.
He can, and obviously you shoot down the pylon power and Blink. Maybe the pylon in the south just reaches. It does not. You're going to recall in the base, it's obviously the option, then you just move to the low ground and you just get rid of some probes, and just having that Blink faster is obviously giving Drogo all of these opportunities, so it's working out quite nicely for Drogo. 4 probes delays the Blink a bit further as well from ShaDoWn, and just all adds up in his favor. And he kind of needed to do something, right, because ShaDoWn across the map I felt like did very well just then, and yeah, Drogo just taking advantage while he can. just I mean, really though, even things out, I guess he will have a +1 attack upgrade lead, something that ShaDoWn never started on his own forge, so we're kind of still missing that. Kind of honestly, just a wild game, definitely kind of back and forth. Drogo takes a slight army supply lead now. ShaDoWn getting close to his own blink. Drogo blinks in. Is that good enough? Does he have enough units here? Because he has no warp-in potential, whereas ShaDoWn does. Yeah. Soon Drogo can blink back, but yeah, I can't say that I love that choice to jump in here.
Yeah, I do think, yes, in the vein that he is able to finally get the blinks off and he's able to dodge shots and stuff. It does look like it works on out. Blink is still another 10 seconds away here for ShaDoWn, so he's still missing that extra micro potential. Shield battery gets focused hard down, it gets killed, and now suddenly it does seem like if Drogo can get reinforcements here fast enough, he may be able to retake a bit of an economic edge here.
Yeah, even though he blinked in, the fight went long enough that eventually he had the blink advantage still, and that did sort of turn things right. And I was also very ready for ShaDoWn to have a warp in, and it just never arrived to the point where Drogo's units walking across the map came first. I was like, whoa, how? That was kind of baffling, as yeah, overall Drogo obviously does come out ahead. This was worthwhile for him, just a brave move to make, an audacious call, quite frankly. But hey, it worked out, and he gets into the position. But right now, I think Drogo is obviously very comfortable. Again, +1 in his favor as well, also a factor in that previous fight, and will continue to be a factor. His +2 is already started up, while ShaDoWn finally putting his forge into action. He's just not been able to afford it as he scrapped together units throughout this to try and stay alive.
Yeah, and while Drogo has a fairly significant lead now, Wardy, if there's anything I've learned through this game so far, it's that never count any of these players too far ahead, too early on, because we've been seeing some wild pops in terms, and you know, each of these players have been ahead in this game so far, like at least 2 or 3 times, but Drogo is continuing to build and compound that lead further and further, picking off a lot more of these workers while also doing some good micro with these stalkers to make sure he's not really losing too many of them.
Yeah, Temp Rope's dead, by the way, is obviously just, again, added into ShaDoWn's issues as the trades continue. We've got no pylon here, we've got no battery here. It's just painful because then your warp-ins are a little bit further back from ShaDoWn. He pulls some probes, which honestly, not a bad choice. Drogo really is just missing reinforcements. Again, just taking a while to get here. As fresh stalkers get to the front, it's going to be very important for him, and actually will turn the tide a little bit, and just continues to allow Drogo to keep on fighting. Even if you step back, again, the worker lead is the worker lead, and that means this game is very much so decided, unless ShaDoWn pulls off something truly spectacular, which I think I'm fair to kind of doubt. I don't think that's too likely right now. So
yeah, no, I'm with you at this point. At this point, when you're leading up, almost, I want to say, like, it's not quite double. It's like maybe 80% the supply of your opponent, 180%, whatever, however you want to put it. I do think that Drogo is going to be in a pretty gosh darn good spot. +2 weapons finishes up. Charge finishes up as well, so you see one of those zealots making its way to the front lines. Blink forward allows that zealot forward, and the GG is finally called on out. ShaDoWn gonna tap out, and the series gets tied up 1-1 by Drogo.
It does indeed. Just a very different game. I said we might see something very different, right, going into this next game, and it really was very different. So yeah, I guess everything I was already expecting. Yeah, cool game. I mean, it was looking very good for ShaDoWn. It really was. I think we both saw that. We both kind of expected ShaDoWn to kind of have it. And again, I just go back to, I think he really messed up the priorities in that fight. I think he really did things in the wrong order. Again, like, it's all well and good wanting to defend at home, but your moment is then and now. Do not give your opponent the chance to kind of upset your super strong army. And like I say, the decision to just go straight in could have changed everything. Even just better micro, like, he lost one Immortal that was super savable. And not just super savable, he could have kept it on such higher HP as well. And I get it. Across the map, there's stuff going on, but just pull the probes, because if you're microing that Immortal, Drogo has to focus much more as well. Whereas if Drogo was just focused on the other side, he didn't get punished for focusing on the other side. So yeah, I think just again the attention was placed in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that leads us to a game 3 at least, which is very cool because yeah, we're obviously excited to see more StarCraft.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many little things in those fights and stuff. Like, I think even to bring up, like, the Phoenix surviving with, like, barely any hit points. It was literally one attack away from dying. Yeah. But it ends up being the thing that ends up killing off the Warp Prism, because that actually could have also allowed 2 Immortals and the Warp Prism to actually get out of there and abandon ship on that, at which point ShaDoWn would have actually had a really sick advantage still going to the next end of things. Because even if he loses the middle of the map and everything and PtitDrogo managed to survive, having 2 Immortals and a Warp Prism is already a really big advantage to have. So, oh god, yeah, I'm with you. I could talk a lot more about like all the little things in that game that kind of turned the game around on its head a couple of times. At the end of the day, we move into game number 3, and similar to how we kind of opened up game number 2 saying a lot of things can change up, I think it's probably going to be the same. I don't expect we're going to be seeing a Proxy Gate versus Proxy Robo base trade into a weird like trading of who's ahead 6 different times throughout the game. I think we'll get a different game now, Wardy.
I think that's a pretty safe guess. I'd be amazed if it was the same. Is in the bottom right. I read Protoss. PtitDrogo.
And up here in the top left, we have our blue Protoss player. He is ShaDoWn. Oh boy. All right, Orty, what do you want to see from these guys when you have 2 wild games like this? What do you think you go to in game number 3 of a very important match for both these players, where it is literally elimination for who loses?
Not elimination. It's 1-1, right?
Oh, sorry. No, this is the one. Oh, this is one of the 1-1 matches. You're right. Sorry. My head went back to like we were still in Group B. We're in Group A, so they're 1-1, but it's still an important match.
No, absolutely, because we talked about it earlier with Mana and Gongfu. It's the kind of match that really sets the tone for the rest of the group, and you know they're the kind of players where every single series is going to matter a lot. Especially here in this Group B as well, right? I mean, Group B is not an easy group to be in at all, so that's also going to be quite a factor, if I have to say so myself. So, yeah, I think it's going to be rough. I think it's going to be difficult. What do I want to see? I think Drogo really got outplayed in the macro game, right? And while he didn't exactly set off great in the proxy game, I think it's much easier to make the proxy game go in your favor than the macro game, right? So,
yeah.
Maybe a bit more aggression from Drogo. And from ShaDoWn, I think he just needs to play a solid game. I don't think ShaDoWn needs to do anything too crazy. I don't think ShaDoWn needs to do anything particularly, like, wild or, like, you know, he can proxy, he can macro. I actually don't mind what ShaDoWn does. Just needs to keep his attention in the right places and just kind of be on top of what Drogo is doing. Try and minimize the kind of variance, because I think overall I still like more what I've seen from ShaDoWn, because he's putting himself in bad positions consistently. Just needs, you know, just didn't close it out in that game number 2.
Yeah, I think that's actually entirely fair, and I totally agree with that. I think it also lines up with even when Drogo has been like in peak form and stuff, I usually still associate Drogo as being a very strong like early and mid game player. Not to say that he can't play late game and everything, but I think he's just good at it. He's very good at like the early game and mid game and execution of maybe an opening or little bits of the micro and kind of how he ends up trading things out. So I don't hate that idea as well of him maybe not necessarily just doing like a 1 base attack or something, but like doing something even off of the 2 bases and trying to get up a little bit in his opponent's face and try and put on some pressure. I do like that idea.
Yeah, Stargate for ShaDoWn, so he will take the more, I mean, 2 different routes basically. Drogo puts his gas into sentries, so he's going to have information in the form of hallucinations, and he will be able to use those sentries later, you know, for a bit of a stronger gateway focused force. He's going to move into the Twilight faster. Whereas ShaDoWn will get the Stargate, so he's going to get detection and, not detection, but scouting in the form of the Stargate units, and the potential to do some damage and to put himself into a little bit of a lead. You can see Drogo will spot the battery on the natural, which I think is a pretty good sign in and of itself, just like, oh, he's definitely being defensive, right? Like, he's not building up too much, and he sees himself the Oracle popping out as well. So Drogo gets really good information. Now he can set up his defense, an immediate battery on the way, and, yeah, it'll be kind of down to ShaDoWn to make up for this later blink that he's going to have in these early minutes.
Yep. And the battery and also just knowing where to warp in your stalkers and stuff is also going to be extremely helpful, because otherwise when you have 3 sentries, you can be a little bit more vulnerable to the Oracle. As you can even see over here, just being able to snag 2 kills, even knowing that the Oracle was coming, because you don't quite have all of the units to split up between all the different bases and stuff, is a bit annoying. But at the end of the day, Oracle snagging 2 kills is definitely not the end of the world. So ShaDoWn can be happy with his little bits of damage, but also, Drogo, I'm not going to be too worried about taking the damage.
Yep. So, nice force field. It's going to catch a couple of adepts. I like that.
There wasn't a battery at the natural, so I think that Adept actually could... Nah, it doesn't decide to dive too much further in, so ends up losing its life without really finding a bit of damage. And looks like there is actually a battery now that's finished up at the natural, but the Oracle's going to head over to the main base, and paired together, they don't care if there's a battery over there. That's a lot of good worker damage.
Yep, 6 probies just going down. That's an awesome start from these couple of Oracles, and that puts ShaDoWn into a good worker lead, you know, significant enough to maybe get a couple of extra warpins off and just start to take an edge. You'll see Drogo dropping the third base moment soon as ShaDoWn's battle line is up, so remember that Drogo still has the faster blink, so he may still be able to get on the map and do something, but that's also the power of these Oracles. They're going to hold the Stalkers back at home and nullify the ability to kind of blink around on the map, so gotta love that part of this from ShaDoWn as well, the fact that Drogo can't make use of his blink that easily.
Yeah, very, very true. Do have to be careful with those Oracles, because the one way that they can still use it is defensively, to just find the Oracles and pick them off or something. Over here is the Oracles are actually going to stick around for a little bit, and that is going to mean the death of one of them. 4 workers going down in exchange for it. And keeping one Oracle alive is still enough to at least continue to get revelations off, to throw up some stasis traps and stuff later on, but no longer can ShaDoWn actually bypass the shield battery healing and stuff, so Oracle is going to be a little bit less useful, and that finally prompts Drogo to feel comfortable about moving out onto the map. But hey, I mean, you were talking about this before, Wordy. The blink was earlier for Drogo, but blink is done now for ShaDoWn, so he doesn't have that much to fear anymore.
No, he's done what he needed to, right? Which was to buy himself time to get blink up. He's done it with a worker lead, so the advantage he had was the Oracle, the advantage Drogo had was blink, and now who's got the advantage? Well, it's ShaDoWn. He's got the worker lead, then blink's evened out, right? So yeah, ShaDoWn did this perfectly. It was what it needed to be. And now he's the one coming onto the map, denies a hallucination, which is nice. Just make Drogo a little bit uneasy and unsure of what's going on. He doesn't necessarily need to take a fight or anything, just, you know, hold some position, see what's going on. He does have the Oracle kind of pressuring as well, so yeah, I like what ShaDoWn's doing. Robo from both players, and at some point I imagine we maybe even see a Dark Shrine starting up, you know, because we're getting to that point where I think both of them are going to start heading to that Game 1 scenario where it's going to be a lot of gateway units, and hence the DT harass is going to become a major part of this game.
Yeah, and there you go. See Dark Shrine immediately getting started up right as you finish your point there, and definitely backing up what you were saying. Can add so much value, especially for the run bys and stuff on maps like this, where your bases do start getting a little bit more spread out once you start going up to 4th bases, which, speak of the devil, Drogo is going to go ahead and throw down his own 4th base as well. But both these players are going to try and keep an eye out at each other and their army positions with the Hallucinate Phoenix. But I think there is going to be that certain point where both these players are going to start getting up all their upgrades and everything. They're going to get their big gateway floods, and then we'll start to see... I feel like Skirmish is pretty similar to how that game number 1 was going a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's like game number 1, I think, is a good precedent of what we should expect here. And it was very skirmishy, just, you know, back and forth, a lot of different fights, splitting armies into 2. This map works in a very similar way. It's got, like, kind of very defined lanes, right? Like, you go up the right side, you go through the middle, or one of the side middle pathways, you know, give or take a bit, and then you've got the left side. So I generally expect we're going to see one army up the right and kind of one down the left, or, you know, one of them might be a bit more centralized or whatever, based on which base location we're looking at and everything. We just drop our nexus down on the left-hand side. Get that 4th base up from ShaDoWn. Obviously, Drogo was already doing the same, as you mentioned. But yeah, I do like that ShaDoWn's got this faster Shadow Stride. This time, Drogo, Robobay, and Robo Facility, he's going to play into the Disruptors, so maybe he feels like he can't outplay ShaDoWn in a repeat of Game 1. But what he can do is play a different style, right? And if ShaDoWn wants to be the aggressor and be all over, which maybe Drogo feels like he will, these players play each other a lot in the French scene. If he has a feel for what ShaDoWn likes to do, maybe he says, okay, well, maybe my better shot against that is to get to Disruptors, is to try and get those big shots, and just to try and control his aggression and take his momentum away from him by just getting big hits, taking his numbers away, and then maybe finally finding myself the lead to go across the map myself.
Yeah, I actually like that kind of reasoning and logic and stuff. That's what he's thinking a lot more. Double Stargate also. Wait, okay. Wardy, I'm used to seeing the player that goes double. Yeah. One player goes double Robo. The other player goes double Stargate. Drogo's doing double Robo and double Stargate.
Oh, that's a great, intriguing point. Just Fleet Beacon, we start to go carriers, maybe, if he feels like he can defend with Disruptors, and he just sets up to kind of make that Sky Toss transition, because it is quite a defendable map if you're going to do nothing but sit back. Every location here is choked up, so the Disruptors should have reasonable defensive setups. So maybe we just drop a Fleet Beacon and we go late. Because you're right. I mean, if you told me one player's about to build Stargates, yeah, I would have said ShaDoWn to build Phoenix against the Disruptors. Not so much Drogo, but that's the only thing that really makes sense. Because he doesn't need Phoenix, and he doesn't need, you don't need double Oracle. And yeah, there's the Fleet Beacon coming down. So I guess that's the plan, just sort of prepping for the future, but the not too distant future. The double Fleet Beacon. Okay, I think that might be a bit of a mistake.
Yeah, I don't think that he's gonna try and get up the God, I'm trying to even remember like Anion Pulse Crystals and what else, like the Tempest range upgrade at the same time. To hit a stick timing. Yeah, the destabilize. He's gonna try and get Tempest extra damage to structures upgrade at the same time he has Phoenix range to really hit that 13-minute PvP timing with them. Like that's not really the plan.
Definitely just.
It kind of sucks too. Those are expensive buildings. Like Fleet Beacon is 300, 200, I think, which is. It's one of the most expensive buildings Protoss can go for.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just a little bit of a shame. It could have been an extra unit. He cancelled it last second. Oh, he noticed.
Okay, that's good. Honestly, it's close to being a carrier.
Yeah, that's actually kind of true, right? That is some money. Here we go, ShaDoWn. I mean, to be honestly, I feel like ShaDoWn's playing this too slowly. Like, ShaDoWn didn't dive into Disruptors. His opponent showed no interest of being on the map at all. And when Drogo wasn't on the map or anything, I think ShaDoWn should have asked, well, what's going on? Why am I the player sat at home when I'm also only building gateway units? And it's because your opponent's not doing the same as you. You are the one that's kind of playing this too slowly. And, Drogo already has, I mean, put it this way, it's 8-0 Disruptors. The advantage ShaDoWn has is a few DTs on the map, but they've not really done much yet. And Drogo's already on his way to his first few carriers, so this is absolutely prime time for Drogo. ShaDoWn can play this out because he's getting Disruptors of his own, and even on a lower count, you can find some amazing shots. But Drogo has the leg up into where both players want to eventually be here, and that's going to make a major difference. And if Drogo can, really exploit the carrier count at some point, I think ShaDoWn might end up in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I have to wonder. There's the one big question, which is when does Drogo feel like needs to move out? Because of course he is sitting on a lower base count, but if his plan is I have this many Disruptors and I'm going to get up maybe like say 4 or 5 carriers and then do my move out, then yeah, he's going to be able to hit well before ShaDoWn is actually able to get up almost any carriers himself. Like, this may actually just be the timing where he tries to do the big move out. Has to be really careful, because the one danger I will say, and you were talking about how this is a good map for Disruptors, well, that also means that your opponent, even just having a small number of Disruptors, can be really scary.
Both of Drogo's observers are in the same place in the natural. Oh my god! He just got a Disruptor out of that. The DTs are just slicing away. He needs to get his observer over here. I believe it's flying over. He just brought everything across, so it's going to get over here. Like I say, ShaDoWn's starting to build Tempest. He's going to get Tempest up against the carriers. Over time, that can work, but I feel like if Drogo goes across the map already, because he's already set up to go, I feel like this is going to be very good for him. He jumps on that first Disruptor, and that's the issue for ShaDoWn. Doesn't have enough Disruptors to actually keep Drogo from making plays like that. Force Field's forced to blink away. Drogo will just continue to chase, and ShaDoWn is bleeding out units at the moment, desperately trying to rebuild. Yeah,
honestly, trying to play like the mass Blink Stalker style against the extremely strong carrier Disruptor composition is so frustrating, because even with the Tempest and stuff, you just kind of feel like, well, I can't really blink underneath the carriers because the Disruptors are there. They're just going to continue to throw out those shots constantly. Oh, big Disruptor potential there for ShaDoWn. It does land. It actually heavily reduces Drogo's Disruptor count. And I mean, technically the economy didn't get touched for ShaDoWn there. ShaDoWn actually continues to keep up his economy, and he has the Tempest count building. Is that actually enough to put him back in this game?
Yeah, I mean, there was only 2 Disruptors left for Drogo, man. And ShaDoWn's had more income this entire time, so he is mining more. So with trades like that, like, Drogo needed to be very efficient, which he was being until the low Disruptor count got the job done from ShaDoWn. Like, ShaDoWn found more with his 1 or 2 Disruptors than Drogo eventually found with, like, all 8 of his, right? So that's kind of a problem. I still think I like Drogo's army more with carriers over the Tempest, just because the Tempests really do need time to do damage. A lot of Tempests can kill the carriers very quickly, but if there's enough carriers, they can put out so much DPS so quickly. Especially if we get to that +2 air weapons. It looks as though we're going to go already, though. ShaDoWn going to take the chance to get rid of a carrier straight away, thanks to the Tempest shots. And that was just Drogo not really ready to fight. Obviously, if he can get the Disruptors in the right place, he can zone that army quite heavily. There was no zoning being done at all there, but it is going to be important to try and keep his opponent a little bit at bay at the very least.
Super interesting for Drogo. He's going to try and transition into Tempest of his own, which I mean, it can work out really well, or it could actually really end up backfiring, because he doesn't really necessarily have a ton of supply to work with, right? So can he actually even get up the Tempest count needed to one-shot his opponent's Tempest? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously it's going to maybe just move into kind of an air army in general, so you're going to start bleeding out gateway units for that kind of priority.
Yeah.
You see the disruptors here, ShaDoWn coming forward a little bit too soon, and well, in the end, Drogo gets a few probes, put some damage on this base, losing units, but obviously rebuilding off the back of this into more of those Tempests. That's obviously where he wants to be. That's, it's very defined. He's been very adamant about it seems. Yeah, fascinating position we're going to end up on. Like I say, I think at this point we're getting to the stage where less gateway units might be better, just because then you also take away the disruptor power. And Drogo's killing his own Stalkers, so it definitely seems like he agrees with that. There is a point where obviously like a rebuild of Stalkers is very good because you can get a lot of Stalkers quickly and they can sway a fight. But I think you want to go into the fight with as many air units as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely going to be the case. The Stalker remax and sometimes can be a little bit powerful just because of the speed of it, where you're literally just remaking the units at the actual fighting point as their carriers and Tempests and stuff are dying. But we're going to see Drogo actually go and hit up, honestly, pretty sick timing over here, where it feels like ShaDoWn is both out of position over on the right-hand side of the map, but also just, I don't think he has as strong of an army right now.
No, ShaDoWn's force is, 9 Tempests and Stalkers and a couple of Disruptors. I really just like, obviously the Tempest count's about even. The carriers really do a lot more generally. The advantage ShaDoWn has is mobility. Stalkers obviously blinking around much better than Tempests, and carriers slowly repositioning. These Stalkers are going to try and dive in there for a little bit before they're going to blink away to attempted safety. And that's a pause from ShaDoWn at a bit of an awkward time, and hopefully nothing too serious here, something we can get sorted quickly. As okay, well that was very quick. So back to it.
Maybe a hotkey issue or something, yeah.
Yeah, maybe his headset fell off, and maybe it's I don't know, something very quickly fixed though. Whatever it is, didn't take long at all as we get right back to it. A couple of carriers, interceptors still chasing. You were right, his army wasn't good. He's rebuilding into more Tempests, but does that make his army good enough? Because I still feel like we end up in this position where Tempests just don't do enough quickly enough, and to me, he still doesn't have an answer to the carriers. Like, yeah, Tempests fight the carriers, but Drogo's going to match the Tempest count, so he's going to have more... Like, where's the advantage for ShaDoWn, right? It just isn't there, and now he's losing a couple Tempests as well.
Yeah, I think it's also really tough. We're already seeing, actually, PtitDrogo has more Tempests now than ShaDoWn. Like, that's the kind of place that we're in. It's mostly just Stalkers right now. And even those Tempests, like, it's really tough to not just overkill with Tempests when you have too many. How do you actually do the proper split up of damage? I think you have to have like 2 different control groups that you're constantly using, but you need to micromanage the control groups as you're losing Tempests to make sure that you're still actually killing the carriers. And we see that all of that is just a lot to ask for. The Stalkers are actually putting in some good work over here on all things considered. Most of the carriers have actually started going down. Now it's Drogo that maybe has too many Tempests over here and is actually starting to bleed out quite a few units.
Yeah, this is the Stalker rebuild, man. You open a bunch of Stalkers and they're very good, and I think Drogo was respecting the ground army's needs, right? But okay, that was not the time to recall, right? I mean, I get you save a couple Tempests, but okay, I mean, this just flipped over to ShaDoWn's favor. What a fight that was for him. Yeah, I think Drogo just kind of got a little bit too chasey against those Tempests, and especially because his opponent still had a lot of Stalkers. Drogo's not the one that wants to take a straight-up fight. He wants to fight a bit slower, maybe pick away at Stalkers, get a couple of the shots off, because his opponent's army is worse, but it's a bit more overwhelming, and obviously out in the open, the Stalker warping combined really just gave ShaDoWn the numbers and a 30 supply lead coming out of this, put ShaDoWn into the driver's seat.
Yeah, honestly, like, I do feel like I like the idea of having 5 or so Tempests, especially when you have like +2 air weapons and stuff. Like, I think 5 Tempests is oftentimes enough, and then doing exactly what Drogo's doing right now, where it's like, here's a handful of Tempests, and then I'm just going and building like mostly carriers for the air army, because yes, your carriers will take a lot of damage from your opponent's Tempests and stuff, but so will your Tempests. And I think the carriers are actually going to be able to hold their ground against things like a lot of the Stalkers, especially if you even have in like 1 or 2 of the Disruptors that soak up a couple of the initial attacks. That's where I feel like the big damage output can be for Drogo if he tries to go into that composition. Whereas ShaDoWn is just doubling down on Stalker Tempests. And I do wonder if ShaDoWn's going to run into the exact same issue that Drogo just had, where, yeah, the Stalkers and stuff may be able to hold their own for a little bit, but once they die, like, the Tempests just don't attack fast enough.
That is the issue. Like, the Tempests are meant to be like the slower fights. The moment you have more Tempests, you want the slower fight because they're going to shoot and then wait, and then they shoot and then they wait. So, like I say, just diving across the map as Drogo, that didn't really cut it for him. A lot more carriers coming back for him, so he is going to prioritize those in the rebuild. Whereas it's Mass Tempest for ShaDoWn, and like you're saying, are they now going to be a little bit too many? Is it possibly going to be problematic? Well, we'll find out very soon. We got a Disruptor or two to help out on the ground. The first carrier nearly getting nuked for Drogo. He does turn it around, but the next one from full HP gets nuked anyway. That's the Tempest count we're dealing with here, and Drogo might just want to back it up until he's fully maxed out. Obviously, he doesn't have too much mining. His mining is disadvantaged to ShaDoWn, and he doesn't have anything in the bank while ShaDoWn does, so that is the biggest problem that Drogo sits at, and a lot of the supply is also still in production too, so I don't love the idea of him trying to fight right now.
Yeah. It's like, Wardy, does 14 Tempests help you one-shot the carriers any more than, like, 10 or 8? Like, I think that's the question that I have on my mind, where it's like, would it be more useful to have a different unit besides, like, an extra 7? Like, do the extra 6 or so Tempests actually help out more than just having more Stalkers?
I guess even as you lose Tempest, you maintain the one-shots, right? So that's kind of a big deal.
True. That's very true, actually. Having at least a couple more is probably very, very helpful.
No, this is still 15 Tempests. I mean, yeah, I think a little overkill, sure, but, like, I mean, it's his working. Obviously, Drogo was maybe a bit behind to begin with. We're actually going to take this fight. It looks like ShaDoWn's a little bit terrified of the Disruptors, and rightfully so. Disruptors are pretty terrifying units as he does get chased down. Suddenly, he loses 6 Tempests in this battle, and Drogo is the one with a little bit of a better fight coming out of that, and well, that was really, this really turned into quite the game here on Neo Humanity. Talk about this match being important. Both these players definitely showing that. Drogo losing, unfortunately, a few probes, and just at the point where he's already behind in work, because we've already talked about economy being an issue for him, and as ShaDoWn continues to expand, that is not changing. That fact still remains. But ShaDoWn just has so much more than Drogo right now. He's being cautious because he doesn't want to do what Drogo did, which is to kind of mess up and take a fight, which actually wasn't really the right call. But I think he's doing it just fine. You know, he's shaving away his opponent. He's making sure Drogo doesn't get built back up. He's making sure the eco stays low. This Disruptor doesn't seem to have much of a shot of doing anything. The Stalkers, I was going to say, should maybe target that, but I guess blinking away is just fine as well. And he is going to win the Tempest War, and if you win the Tempest War, you're probably going to win the Ground War. If he's all showing up, I mean, ShaDoWn also just has so much more still building up here.
Yeah, this is where it definitely gets a very, very tough, and you see that Drogo does have to tap